This is the Book of Esther. We are in part 2, or for those of you, chapter 2. We had our the first chapter 2 weeks ago. I sent it out. Hopefully you all were able to review that, go back over it, see the Bible project that we also viewed. I pray that it blessed you. Let's just do a quick review of chapter 1 and we'll go into chapter 2. We talked about the king and his glory. In that we talked about King Ahasuerus, however which way you want to pronounce it. He was still known as Xerxes the First. So all throughout this whole book, I may go from Ahasuerus to Xerxes, so that you'll be able to know that he was known by either one of those names. His reign lasted between 485 and 464 BC. He reigned over 127 provinces that spanned from India to Ethiopia, a rather large area that he was king over. His palace was in Shushan or Susa. The third year of his reign, he made a feast for all of his officials and his servants, all the officers of Persia and Media, the nobles and the princes of all those provinces. He showed the riches of his glorious kingdom. In essence, he was showing off. There's a old saying that says it's good to be the king. And he definitely lets you know not only was he the king, but that he had a very lavish realm and lifestyle. This was to honor the honor of his excellent majesty. He wanted you to see everything he had and everything he was able to obtain. And this is what got me, was the feast or party lasted 180 days in all. That is 6 months. Now, Michelle and I have thrown parties. I've had parties. Maybe, I think one of the longest I ever had was maybe 12, 14 hours. Might been a little longer than that. It was a long one. It was rather intense. But 6 months, I don't think so. We dealt with the party and the queen. Party is thrown for everyone, not just the nobles. So he also threw a second party. And this party lasted for 7 days. So for actually 127 days, this man threw a party. And it was this party was thrown in the court of the garden of the king's palace. Kind of back up. When you talk about a party or a feast that lasts for 6 months, this wasn't just within his palace. This is a party that lasted, it was probably all over. Doesn't matter where you were, doesn't matter, all of his nobles. The area was probably vast. Think about all the food and all the wine and all the extracurricular activities that went into a 6-month party. That was rather lavish, but this one was more specific. This entailed everybody that's in his realm, and they all could come within those 7 days and be in the court of the gardens of his palace. The courtyard was beautifully decorated and drinks were served. Let's see. Okay. There were white and blue linen curtains fastened with cords of fine linen, purple on silver rods, marble pillars. The couches were of gold and silver on mosaic pavement, alabaster, turquoise, and white and black marble. This place was laid out. Drinks were served in golden vessels, and each vessel was different from the other. So you can't even imagine all the people that were there and all the different golden vessels that were all fashioned differently from one another. This man is showing you, I got everything. I'm the master of it all. Check me out. There was royal wine in abundance according to the generosity of the king. There were no limits were placed on the drinking, which meant you could drink as much as you like or little as you like, and they should do according to each man's pleasure. You could do whatever you wanted to do. So now we come to the queen. You had the queen whose name is Vashti. She also made a feast for the women in her part of the royal palace. And she invited the concubines who belonged to King Ahasuerus. So number 3, we dealt with the king's command. On the 7th day, the heart of the king was merry with wine, meaning actually he was drunk. He was toe up. He commanded his 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of the king to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing her royal crown. Now, there are those who say, in essence, that's all the king wanted her to wear was her royal crown. It doesn't really specifically say that, but if you did any research regarding this king and all that he had, and after, man, you've been drinking and partying for 6 months, you know, and you the king over everything and got all this opulence, I'm sure, you know, his thoughts weren't like, well, just array yourself and still just wear your crown. I'm sure this was definitely a time of great debauchery. So this is what he commanded. It was not a request. He commanded her to come, show her beauty to the people and the officials, because she was a very beautiful woman. However, the queen refused. She refused to come, and the king was furious, and his anger burned within him. Not only was he just mad, he was embarrassed, because he's the king. You don't refuse the king. I'm the king. Whatever I say, that's what you do. She says no. So he is angry, and the angrier he got, the more inside his anger just began to he just lost it. So the king consulted with his wise advisors who knew all the Persian laws and customs. This was the king's manner toward all who knew law and justice. So it was not unusual for him to call forth his advisors who knew more of the law and the customs to help to give him some advice. So the 7 princes of Persia and Media, they met with the king regularly. They held the highest positions in the empire. So he asked the question, what shall we do to Queen Vashti? So according to the law, because she did not obey the command of the king, one of those 7 princes, I didn't put all their names in here. You got to go back over on that one because there was a lot of names. Memucan answered before the king and the princes. Queen Vashti has not only wronged the king, but also all the princes and all the people who are in all the provinces of the king. Just by disobeying him, by actually refusing him, that was pretty, you know, who refuses the king? That's not something that you do. So she didn't just wrong him. They're saying she wronged everybody. Dealing with the queen's behavior. He says, it will become known to all women. They will despise their husbands because the queen refuses to appear before the king. So goes the queen, so goes all the women of the land. The noble ladies of Persia and Media will say to all the king's officials that they have heard of the behavior of the queen, there will be excessive contempt and wrath. So we're going to have an uproar of the women and a mutiny. We can't have that. So the king gave a decree. A royal decree goes out. It says, record in the laws of the Persians and the Medes so that it will not be altered. Here's the thing. Whenever a royal decree went out, no one could change it, not even the king who decreed it. Once it was spoken, what's the saying that we saw in the Ten Commandments? So it is written, so let it be done. Ramsey spoke that. Well, this is how it was. A royal decree goes out, cannot be altered. So the Vashti shall come no more before King Ahasuerus. That the king give her royal position to another who is better than she. You just been stripped of your title. You are no longer the king. The king's decree will proclaim throughout all of his empire. All wives will honor their husbands, both great and small. This was his decree. Y'all women, you're going to honor your husbands, great and small. He sent letters to all the king's provinces, to each province in its own script, to every people in their own language, that each man should be master in his own house. So now, let me go back. If he sets this decree, any woman that disobeys this, the husband has a right to do exactly what the king does. Get out. Don't come here no more. I'm going to replace you with somebody who is better than you. So all woman would have to do is disobey. I myself and Michelle, we've performed many marriage ceremonies. I've done quite a few weddings, and I can tell you now that part obey is actually no longer used in the marriage ceremony. I don't use it. That don't go over well. That don't go over well. So if you notice, any marriage ceremony that you've been in within the last 10, 15 years,
they don't say obey.
They don't say obey. So, like I said, we have now a women's movement that says we ain't obeying anything. But then again, the word of God tells us that women are to be aligned. That's the word more better used with their husbands. And husbands, you make sure that you love your wife and you don't drive her to a point to where she has to make a decision to follow you or not. Michelle and I, we talked about this a little bit today, that we have to be in agreement and alignment in what we do in our household. So yes, we as men, God made us first. We are accountable. We are for our wives, for our children. We are not to treat them as lower class relationship people. We are to become one flesh. And in order to do that, there has to be some agreement and alignment. Are we always going to agree with each other? No. But we have to align ourselves, even when there is two different opinions, to state who is going to, what are we going to do? I may not agree with it, but I'm going to do it because I trust you.
Malcolm, in some translations, in Jewish history, he had Vashti killed.
Yeah, there are some that say he had her killed. The majority of them do say that he was kind enough to just set her down, but didn't kill her. There are those that do say, yeah, he killed her, but
it was tradition.
I mean, he was drunk. He was so drunk, I can tell you what, I don't think he knew one thing or another. That's why he had to rely upon those who knew more of the law than he did at the time, or that he did not trust himself enough at the time to make that type of decision on his own. He knew he was drunk.
For 6 months.
For 6 months.
He was slushy.
He was towed up for 6 months and 7 days.
And a week.
So yeah, I don't think anybody who's up under that much of an influence has a rational mind and thinking. So the one thing that was at least in the laws were that just set her down, take away her position. You could not come before the king unless you were called. And he's just saying, look, okay, she's not coming before me anymore.
No more.
She's no longer going to be queen. See ya. I got enough concubines and I'm going to find somebody else better than you anyway. So see you later, alligator. So that was chapter 1. We had the setup dealing with the king, with the removal of the queen. So now we're getting ready to go into the setup. We're going to this is chapter 2. First, are there any questions regarding chapter 1? If we are good, no one has anything, let's go into chapter 2. Searching for a new queen. This was Esther, the 2nd chapter, verses 1 through 4. It says, after these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus, Xerxes subsided, he remembered Vashti, what she had done, and what had been declared against her. So now he's sobering up. Then the king's servants who attended him said, let beautiful young virgins be sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather all the beautiful young virgins to Shushan, the citadel, into the woman's quarters, under the custody of Hegai, the king's eunuch, custodian of the women. And let beautiful preparations be given them. Let beauty preparations be given them. Then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. This thing pleased the king, and he did so. That's the New King James Version. Let's break it down. In the New Living Translation. After Xerxes' anger had subsided, he began thinking about Vashti, what she had done, and the decree was made. Man, she refused me. She did not obey me. That's a problem. And I do remember, and I do kind of, that I did make a decree to banish her and to pick a new queen. See, you know what happens when you start coming out of a fog? You start remembering the stuff that you did, stuff you said. One thing he could not forget is that whenever a decree was made, it had to be followed. So you had this beautiful woman that you banished because she said no, and you said you got to go. Let's get a new one. So the king's servants made suggestions to his personal attendants. So his personal attendants suggested, let us search the empire to find beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint agents in each province to bring these beautiful young women to the royal harem at the fortress of Susa. Hegai or Hagi, whatever, the king's eunuch in charge of the harem will see that they are all given beauty treatments. After that, the young woman who most pleases the king will be made queen instead of Vashti. This advice was very appealing to the king, so he put the plan into effect. Let beautiful young virgins be sought, gather them into the women's quarters under the custody of Hegai. This was the king's eunuch, and he had custody of the women. Those of you who, or is there anybody who doesn't know what a eunuch is? This is a man who has been altered. That's a nice way to put it, isn't it? To where his sex drive is nil and void. He can definitely, he's the only one that can be trusted over all these women because he wasn't going to do anything anyway. That beauty preparations be given to them. Give them opportunity to understand what the king required of these women as far as their appearance is concerned. I just got rid of one of the most beautiful women in the country, so whoever comes got to be at least as beautiful as her. That the young woman who pleases the king, she's going to be chosen as the queen. So in essence, she had a beauty contest. This was pretty much the precursor to Miss America, Miss Universe. The king comes out of his anger, remembers the decree made against. Then he had overseers throughout his kingdom collect, probably by force, beautiful women virgins, and bring them to his harem in Susa. So trust me, this wasn't just a, hey, come and show me your beauty. I'm pretty sure they went out and said, you, come on. You got to come. You have to come. This is the king's command. This is the king's decree. You don't have a choice. You are being brought to the king. This is what we're going to do for you. Number one, you need to be a virgin and you need to be at least halfway pretty so we can finish up the process. You're going to be part of his harem.
Let me kill myself.
Huh?
She said she's gonna kill herself.
What'd you say?
I'm sorry, that's my husband. He tripped.
Okay, Esther in the second chapter, verses 5 through 9. Now we're going to deal with Mordecai and Esther. Introduction. In Shushan the citadel, there is a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Kish had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives who had been captured with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. Remember, we had talked before about the Jews that had been captive in Babylon. Once they were set free, some left, some stayed. Mordecai had brought up Hadassah. That is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother. The young woman was lovely and beautiful. When her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. So it was when the king's command and decree were heard And when many young women were gathered at Shushan the citadel, under the custody of Haggai, that Esther also was taken to the king's palace into the care of Haggai, the custodian of the women. Now the young woman pleased him. She pleased Haggai, and she obtained his favor. So he readily gave beauty preparations to her besides her allowance. Then 7 choice maidservants were provided for her from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maidservants to the best place in the house of the women. So Mordecai was the son of Jair, son of Kish, the Benjamite. Time there was a Jewish man, fortress, Mordecai, son of Jair. He was from the tribe of Benjamin and was a descendant of Kish and Shimei. His family had been among those who, with King Jehoiachin, there we go, of Judah, have been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. I want you to kind of keep that in your mind for a little bit. Carried away. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon when they were taken from Jerusalem. Hadassah, Esther, was Mordecai's cousin. This man had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hadassah, who was also called Esther. When her father and mother died, Mordecai adopted her into his family and raised her as his own daughter. She was lovely and beautiful. Her father and mother had died. Mordecai took her as his own daughter. Esther was taken to the king's palace. As a result of the king's decree, Esther, along with many other young women, was brought to the king's harem at the fortress of Susa and placed in Haggai. I'm gonna call him Haggai because Haggai's care. Many young women were gathered at Shushan the citadel. So it wasn't just her, there was quite a few. Into the care of Haggai, the custodian of the women. He was a eunuch. And Esther was one of them. Esther pleased Haggai. Haggai was very impressed with Esther and treated her kindly. He quickly ordered a special menu for her and provided her with beauty treatments. He also assigned her 7 maids, especially chosen from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maids into the best place of the harem. So she obtained his favor. He treated her very kindly. He gave her beauty preparations. She had a special menu for her to eat, so she had her own chef. Gave her 7 choice maidservants. She even had hand servants, maidservants who attended to her. And he moved her and her maidservants to the best place. So now we're introduced to 2 of the main characters in the story, Mordecai and Esther. Esther's parents were out of the picture. So Mordecai selflessly raised her as his own daughter. Esther was beautiful. So she's brought to the harem of the king's officials. And while she is there, she finds favor with the man in charge of the girls. So now you got 2 main characters along with the king. Vesti is, she's not even mentioned no more. She's out of the picture, she gone. But you got Xerxes, Mordecai, and Esther. However, Esther has a secret. Verses 10 and 11. Esther had not revealed her people or family, for Mordecai had charged her not to reveal it. Every day, Mordecai paced in front of the court of the women's quarters to learn of Esther's welfare and what was happening to her. She did not reveal her nationality. She didn't tell anyone about her nationality or her family background because Mordecai had directed her not to do so. So when they came to and took her, Mordecai let her know from get-go, listen, do not tell anybody about your background, who you are, where you're from, your nationality. All they need to see is that you're beautiful and that you've been chosen.
You think they wouldn't have taken her if she had?
I don't think so much that they wouldn't have taken her, but
Because they
she
were
would
also-
have been, at this point, I think it was more a, let's just, we've already come from a place of captivity where as a Jew, we've been marked.
Right.
And, you now have been taken and you're beautiful. You've been taken. You don't want any more attention brought upon you because now you say you're a Jew. So that's just, you don't need no more. You don't need no more attention. You're already getting it because they're taking you. You're beautiful. We know that. Let's not pour salt into any wound. Good question, though. So don't talk about your family background. Instruct her not to reveal that information. Mordecai has Kelphar watched. So they take her, but he also knows, I've had the care of this woman. So I need to know what's going on with my daughter. So every day he's walking near the courtyard of that harem, wanting to get any word about what has happened to Esther. Hadassah. Every day he walked in front of the king women's quarters. You want to know Esther's welfare, what had happened to her. Esther has two names. Her Jewish name is Hadassah. Esther is actually her Persian name. No one knew Esther's Hebrew name because she's keeping her identity a secret. She's hiding the fact that she's a Jew. The reason is somewhat noble. She's simply doing what she's been told. It's not that she's going to do or say anything. Her father, her adopted father, is the one who has the wisdom that says, don't tell nobody you're a Jew. You've been given a Persian name, keep that. That's just like Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, which is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And Abednego. Even Daniel's name. Belshazzar. So they had Hebrew names, but they now had Babylonian names or Persian names. So she's going by her Persian name. Coming before the king. Esther 2, verses 12 through 14. Each young woman's turn came to go into King Ahasuerus. After she had completed 12 months preparation, according to the regulations for the women. For thus were the days of their preparation appropriate. 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 months with perfumes and preparations for beautifying women. So you had a whole year of preparation. Now, kind of want to stop here. Go on Facebook and look at some of these women who do their makeup. I've seen some. The ones that really get me are the ones who they show them taking off that makeup and what they look like before they put the makeup on.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I understand makeup.
Makeup.
There are some barns that definitely need to be painted.
Oh man.
Hey, I'm speaking truth.
You are.
Okay,
Wow.
one of the prime examples is Oprah. Come on now.
Yeah, that's true.
Come on now.
That's true. Yeah.
Come on.
But still.
Hey,
Barn.
I'm sorry. That woman, thank you, Jesus, for makeup. Ain't no truth. Ain't no lie. So here you go. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm just messing with you.
Pastor.
Bad pastor. Bad pastor. Bad pastor.
That's not nice.
Hey, but I'm sorry.
But it's true.
It's true. So they had 12 months preparation. 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 months with perfumes and preparations for beautifying women. So they went through a long regimen. And after 12 months, now you brought to the king. And trust me, they weren't brought to the king just so he could look at them.
Yeah, that's the bad part.
They had to go into the king. Thus prepared, each young woman went to the king, and she was given whatever she desired to take with her from the women's quarters to the king's palace. In the evening, she went in, and in the morning, she returned to the second house of the women to the custody of Shahagaz, the king's eunuch, who kept the concubines. She would not go into the king again unless the king delighted in her and called her by name. So can you dig it?
Yeah.
Not really. No,
Yeah,
that
you get
sounds
it.
like a rough one.
Hey,
Yeah,
what did it say? It's good to be the king.
you go in one way, you come out.
You go in one way,
You're
you
not the same.
you ain't the same. Not only do you come out, now you get sent over here to live the rest of your time with all these other women. And if the king wanted you again, he called you by your name. That's the only other time you would see the king.
And if not, you just lived in that house.
If not, you lived in that house.
Oh, so they started in one house, went and saw him.
And then they
went
go to
another
the
house?
second house.
They went to the house with the used people.
They went to the first house for preparation.
That's terrible.
Then you went to the king. He had his pleasure. The morning you went in, the evening you came out, and then now you go to the second house, which is where you stay. Remember, now you got two different eunuchs. Haggai was the first. He dealt with all the preparation.
Right.
Shahashgaz now is the eunuch that kept the concubines. This is where you're going to be until the king calls for you again because you pleased him. If you didn't please him, oh well.
You just get to stay there. If you didn't please him, you did not get to even go home.
No.
No, you were a permanent concubine.
No, you were there.
You had to stay there. You couldn't marry anybody else because the king had already knew you personally.
That's right.
I'm glad I'm ugly.
There you go. Each young woman's turn came to go into the king. Before each young woman was taken to the king's bed, she was given the prescribed 12 months of beauty treatment, 6 months of oil of myrrh, followed by 6 months of special perfumes and ointments. When it was time for her to go to the king's palace, she was given her choice of whatever clothing or jewelry she wanted to take from the harem or harem. 12 months preparation, oil of myrrh, and special perfumes and ointments. So she was dolled up, made up, smelling mighty good.
But they all smelled the same.
It didn't matter.
It's what the king liked.
It was the king liked.
You have to remember it's probably what Vashti smelled like.
That's right.
Because he was still missing Vashti.
He was still missing her, but he was drunk when he made that decree. So now that he done came out of it, he got to find somebody who is as good or better than what he left. Man, he's not going to change his idea of beauty. He's not going to change what he's used to smelling. what is used to being around. So whoever it was that had to come to him, however she smelled before, however her skin was before, whatever she used to wear before, now you're going to have 12 months to prepare for one night with the king to please him. And it better be good, because if it ain't, see ya.
Pastor, can I read this real quick?
Yes.
In addition to its pleasant, warm and earthy scent, myrrh oil may also have several health benefits.
Mm-hmm.
May help kill harmful bacteria, parasites, and other microbes.
Mm-hmm.
It may also support oral health, help heal skin sores, and ease pain and swelling.
See, because you got to realize, these women were chosen from
all
the
over.
kingdom between India and
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia.
Wow.
So they could be from anywhere, any condition,
With different cultures.
different cultures, different color, different mindsets, different ways of eating, all kinds of different things. So now it takes 12 months for them to all come together to be just like, if not better than, the queen that he got rid of.
Different illnesses.
Because
Different illnesses, all kinds of things.
he is the king.
He the king. So yeah, it's gonna take 12, it's gonna take a year. So you had a year just to prepare.
It's great.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's like going on a year-long diet.
Yeah, a year-long diet. Yeah. Because that's what, in essence, that's what Esther had to do. She had her own special menu. She had 7 women to help her. So yeah,
He wanted them a certain way.
he wanted them a certain way, and that's how they had to be.
All of them.
All of them. When prepared, she was given whatever she desired to take with her from the women's quarters to the king's palace. And trust me, all the things that were in the women's quarters were things that also pleased the king. She wasn't taking something to the king that he did not like.
Plus they had a lot of jewelry and gold.
Oh, go to now. If every goblet was different, made of gold, think of all the precious jewels and everything else that was in there. And they had their pick to take whatever they wanted with them to the king. So a night with the king. That evening, she was taken to the king's private rooms, and the next morning she was brought to the second harem, where the king's wives lived. There she would be under the care of Hashgaz, whatever, the king's eunuch in charge of the concubines. She would never go to the king again unless he had especially enjoyed her and requested her by name. Now, it doesn't mean that he would, that you know, if he liked her, you won't come back again. But it doesn't mean you're gonna be the queen. You're a concubine. You're coming back for one purpose and one purpose only: to pleasure me. In the evening, she went into the king's bedroom. In the morning, she returned to the second house. Custody of the king's eunuch, who kept the concubines, and she'd never go into the king again unless she delighted him, and then he had to call her by her name.
That's what I was thinking.
What's that?
He wouldn't even remember all of that.
No, but see, you don't have to remember, as long as you got servants.
Yeah.
Remember that one over there? Remember such a day? What's her name?
Yep.
Sally Mae. Okay, bring me Sally Mae.
That's crazy.
Here she comes.
The king was tired.
Esther's one night with the king, Esther 2:15-18. Now, when the turn came for Esther, the daughter of Abigail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as his daughter to go into the king, she requested nothing but what Haggai, the king's eunuch, the custodian of the women, advised. Esther obtained favor in the sight of all who saw her. So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther more than all the other women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins. So he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Esther. Then the king made a great feast called the Feast of Esther for all his officials and servants, and he proclaimed a holiday in the provinces and gave gifts according to the generosity of a king. So it's now her time. Esther was the daughter of Abihail, yeah, whatever,
Yeah.
who was Mordecai's uncle. Mordecai had adopted young cousin Esther. When it was Esther's turn to go to the king, she accepted the advice of Haggai, the eunuch in charge of the harem. She asked for nothing except what he suggested. She was admired by everyone who saw her. So she didn't just go and choose anything. Haggai had a purpose as well. But she found favor in him. So this is what he suggested. You take with you. Take this. Don't take anything else. I know the king. I'm giving you an advantage. This is what I want you to take with you. And I'm kind of going to guarantee you're going to get it. She accepted his advice. She didn't ask for nothing other than whatever he suggested. She obtained favor with not just him, but with her servants or anybody else who was around the king and everything. She found favor. This and see, the book of Esther is the only book in our Bible where God is not mentioned. But because she was a Jew, because she was a favored, she found favor. Favor is better than money.
It is.
It's way better than money.
It is.
So she, because of who she was, even though she didn't tell anybody who she was, she had God's favor on her, which allowed her to gather favor from everyone around her. Plus, she was beautiful. She was taken to King Xerxes. Esther was taken to King Xerxes at the royal palace in early winter in the 7th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 7th year of his reign.
So, real quick,
Yes.
the festivity was in the 3rd year of his reign,
Mm-hmm.
and it lasted 6 months.
Yes.
So, say towards the 4th year of his reign is when all of the stupidity happened with him getting rid of Vashti.
Right.
So, this was 6 years later.
Yeah. Well, no, it was
Like,
actually
time to go through
4
all
more
the
years
files.
there because this was in the 7th year. So it's 4 more
Yeah,
years.
4 more.
But remember, 1 whole year was spent just in preparation. So think how long it took him to gather these women.
Right.
You had to gather these women. That may have taken from all over. You had to gather them up. Let's say it took between six to 8 months to a year to gather up all these women from all over the provinces. Then you had another whole year, if nothing else, to start weeding them out. Because I guarantee you, there was a weeding out process. Because think of how large this province was. And you just gathering up, most of the guys that was gathering just gathered up women. They weren't a whole little mini contest in each province. No, they gathered, come on. Now you got a weeding out process. You got to sort through them. This one can stay. This is a maybe. This is a no. This is yes. This is a maybe. This is a no.
But those were the ones that were blessed.
Yeah,
They could go home.
they could go home.
But the closest ones, the ones that came back in the first month, started
Right.
their year at that
Right.
time. So the king's been busy for a couple of years.
He's been busy. He's been busy. I mean, yeah,
This is in your Bible.
this is in the Bible.
I don't think
This was drunkenness, debauchery, all kind of craziness, madness. And this is what a young Jewish woman and her uncle were subjected to.
Think about your worth being measured by your measurements.
Yeah,
We still do that
yeah, we
in
do.
our society. We still
We
Yeah.
do
do.
that.
We do.
Yeah.
Not cool.
It says, and the king loved Esther more than any of the other young women. He was so delighted with her that he set the royal crown on her head and declared her queen. So she must have been the bomb.com.
She had God's favor.
She
It
was
didn't matter what she looked like. She
she-
looked like.
it. And she had God's favor.
Yeah, she
It
was
was a
God's
brick
favor.
skyscraper.
Yeah, man. You say brick skyscraper. So to celebrate the occasion, he gave a big banquet in her honor, named a holiday after her for all the provinces, and gave generous gifts to everybody. So he's not just happy, everybody gonna be happy. When the king happy, everybody happy. He loved Esther more than all the other women. She obtained grace and favor in his sight over all the virgins. She now has been made the queen. She now has a feast named after her, the Feast of Esther. All of his officials and servants. It's a holiday. It's party time again. He gave gifts because he was a generous king. Now the day came when Esther had her turn to go into the king. And it just so happened that the king loved her more than any other virgin. He made her queen in the place of Vashti. There are two reactions to this turn of events. First, we should be amazed that a lowly Jewish girl became queen of the Persian Empire.
Yes.
Like that. And second, the fact that a Jew would be able to fit in so well with this pagan crowd and their pagan king. That's deep.
Empire.
And
Malcolm, it reminds me like there's almost like a parallel to Moses.
yeah,
Like Moses, they didn't know where he came from, right?
right.
And he was held of high and they
Yeah,
therefore why respected him and all that.
Yeah.
And to me, like the whole time I'm sitting here going, wow, Esther's kind of like,
yeah.
without
Yeah.
all the prophecy and all that stuff, but
Right.
she like almost like the female version of Moses. Like,
There you go.
I like
She's
that.
now put in a place of authority.
yeah.
Moses was picked because he was a beautiful baby.
He was a beautiful baby.
But y'all give a king a hard time. I just gotta be on the other side because the scripture says a wife is a crown to her husband's head.
Right.
And if you contrast a crown versus the king of everything picking a wife or
Right.
someone to be a queen, she has to be the bomb.com.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. She has to be.
So if you look at all the detail that goes into a crown that is placed upon a king's head,
Yeah.
it's going to be perfect.
Right. And I think that's another reason why Xerxes was so mad, because when he called for Vashti to come, she in essence said, "Who are you? I'm not doing what you said, dude. There's no agreement here. I got my own thing I'm doing."
Right.
You look who you talking to. You're talking to the king. You're supposed to be part of his glory, and you're deciding that you don't want to do what the king said do. You got to go. And it was the whole thing, even though God was not mentioned in here, you see the godly setup.
Yes. Yes.
We're going to
Yes.
see it even further as we go along, because it said, be amazed that a lowly Jewish girl could become queen of the Persian Empire. I'm sure there was other beautiful women. After a whole year being made up, those that went into him, they weren't scrubs.
Right.
I'm sure they was beautiful too.
They were
But they didn't, the Bible didn't say that they found favor. Esther found the favor. Why did she find the favor? Because she was the king. She was God's chosen.
Yes, come on, Malcolm. Yes, Pastor, that's it.
She was of God's chosen people.
Wow.
God
Yes.
got a plan.
Yep. Yep, that's it.
God's got a plan. So Mordecai discovers a plot. Esther, this is the last, 19 to 23. When the virgins were gathered together a second time, Mordecai sat within the king's gate. So all those virgins that had now been gone to the second place, Mordecai sat at the king's gate. Now, Esther had not revealed her family and her people, just as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther obeyed the command of Mordecai as when she, was brought up by him. In those days, while Mordecai sat within the king's gates, two of the king's eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, doorkeepers, became furious and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. So the matter became known to Mordecai, who told Queen Esther, and Esther informed the king of Mordecai's name. When an inquiry was made into the matter, it was confirmed, and both were hanged on a gallows, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles in the presence of the king. So, even after all the young women had been transferred to the second harem and Mordecai had become a palace official, Esther continued to keep her family background and nationality a secret. She was still following Mordecai's directions, just as she had done when she lived in his house. All the young women had been transferred to the second harem. He sat at the king's gate, Mordecai did. Esther had not revealed her family or her people. So now she's the queen, but she still hasn't told even the king or anybody else that she was a Jew.
Yep.
She was still following Mordecai's directions. Mordecai was on duty at the king's gate. One day as Mordecai was on duty at the king's gate, two of the king's eunuchs, Bigthana and Teresh, who were guards at the door of the king's private quarters, became angry at King Xerxes and plotted to assassinate him. The Bible doesn't say what they were angry at, but they decided we can really kill the king. So Bigthana and Teresh, they were the king's eunuchs. They were guards over his private quarters. They were mad, sought to kill him. Mordecai found out about the plot. He heard about the plot, gave the information to Queen Esther. She turned around and told the king about it and said that Mordecai is the one who found this plot out. He's the one that told me, I'm telling you. The investigation was made and Mordecai's story was found to be true. The two men were impaled on a sharpened pole. That was all recorded in the book of the history of King Xerxes' reign. Esther knew about it. She told the king. Mordecai's story was found to be true. Both were hanged on a gallows, as written in the book of the Chronicles. After Esther was crowned queen, it just so happens Mordecai is sitting at the king's gate. It's there that he just happened to overhear a plot. His new in-law, the king. The king is now his in-law. Mordecai then relays the information to Esther. Esther tells the king. King conducts an investigation. Mordecai is right. He hangs the conspirators on a gallows. So now you've got the beginning of one of the greatest stories. And we're going to read in the Word of God where God's not mentioned, but you could see how his plan unfolds for those who have favor with him. And even though we're seeing this about Esther, a lot of things we can take into ourselves. When we got favor with God, People can do all kinds of things, say all kinds of things, but when you got God's favor, doesn't matter what somebody says, doesn't matter what somebody does, you're going to find favor, not just with God. The Bible says that Christ found favor with God and man.
Yes.
So Christ can get favor with God and man, you can too. Quick review questions, because I know it's late and I want to get through. What is the main purpose of this chapter? We dealt with the search for a new queen, Mordecai and Esther, Esther's secret, coming before the king, Esther's one night with the king, and Mordecai's discoveries of a plot. Those were the main points of the chapter. What troubled the king? Well, he got sober, and he remembered Vashti's refusal. He also remembered the decree he made to banish her. I'm sure once he sobered up, he's like, man.
Do you think he made the decree while he was still snookered?
Well, yeah, because he had to go and ask the advice. He didn't come up with this on his own. His princes and nobles, who's a Mimican, said, this is what you need to do. Because she's definitely put a black mark on you. She done hurt everybody, all us men, all us leaders. Every woman in town is now going to do the same thing she did. Hey, man, you need to get rid of this chick.
One woman stood up.
One woman stood up, this chick got to go.
Men have fragile.
Because, you know, if she do it to you, the rest of them sure going to do it to us, and we can't have that. What was the king's servant's suggestion? Collect beautiful young virgins and bring them to the harem of Susa. Who was Esther's cousin and why did she live with him?
Mordecai.
Mordecai. Mordecai.
Her father had died.
But I've been killed, yes.
Who oversaw the virgins who were taken to the king's palace?
The eunuch.
They got the custodian of the women.
Yeah.
What happened when Esther found favor with Hagar?
He gave her her own room,
She
her own
had-
menu, and some servants.
There you go. She had beauty preparations. She had special menu. She had 7 choice maid servants, and she had her own crib
Did a lot of stuff.
That's amazing.
with her servants.
Could you imagine?
Mm-hmm.
The culture shock,
The
She got
culture
extra
shock would have
word.
been bizarre.
that alone. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I love myrrh. Oh, yeah.
We have burned, that we burn in our.
What did the king command the queen to do and why?
Do you have a?
Told her to come here. Show yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Hide her nationality,
Yeah.
hide her family background. That should be what did
What's it, Mordecai?
Mordecai command the queen to do. I said the king, I'm sorry, it should be Mordecai.
Oh, okay.
Family and her family background, Mordecai instructed her not to reveal that information.
The Jews been getting bum rap for a long time.
What was the origin of Esther's 2 names?
Hebrew.
Hebrew's name was Hadassah.
The Hadassah.
Persian name was Esther.
Esther.
Mm-hmm.
What did the virgins have to do before going into the king?
They had to pick
They have to have preparation. They took them over a year to get ready for him.
12 months of preparation.
That was a
Gotcha.
good answer.
6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months of
Mhm.
special perfumes and ointments.
Yes, yes.
There she was given whatever she desired to take with her from the king's quarters to the king's palace. When it was Esther's turn to go to the king, what did she do?
She listened to.
Yeah.
Listen to Hagar's advice.
I said, hey, guy.
Mhm,
She asked for nothing but whatever he suggested.
mhm.
What was the king's response to Esther?
Woo-hoo.
Oh, yeah, man. Woo!
He was like, "Yippee."
Hubba, hubba,
That
hubba. The people love Esther more than all the
Oh, oh Lord.
let the royal crown upon her head and made her the queen. You the queen, baby.
Yeah. She
King
was
made
all
a
that.
feast and named the feast after her.
Yep.
Who plotted against the king
Wait a
and
minute.
what did they plot?
I got a point I've got to make.
Yes.
The king made a great feast in the Feast of Esther.
Mhm.
And then it says the rest of the women were moved to the second house.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
He finished the business with all of the other women
Oh,
even after he had the holiday made.
No, they were still, she was the queen. He still had concubines.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. They had concubines by then.
He
Yeah.
still had concubines. It wasn't no way. He didn't
Yeah.
now just become monogamous. That
Yeah,
wasn't
no,
happening.
that
He the
didn't happen.
king.
Back in the
That's
day.
the point.
Yeah.
He
A wife was just the one that had your children.
right,
Mhm.
right.
That had your heir.
You had others. Just don't think about Solomon.
Yep. Yep. You did too. Yep. You had a lot of concubines.
This who sits on the throne with you. This is the one who has authority
That had
that
your
I
heir.
give
Mhm.
help do things with the kingdom. But when it came to sexual favors and sexual pleasure, yeah,
Yeah,
you got the queen, but hey, queen may not, hey, you. Okay,
Queens get tired.
I ain't gonna go no farther.
The one wife.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
You know,
But you have to say, Malcolm, Pastor, you have to say there was something special about Esther.
Oh yeah, she was
Yes.
special. She
Yes.
stood out.
Yes.
But
Yes.
see,
Yes.
you also have to realize,
Yes.
well, it's not so much he didn't. You still had how can I put this? Women still had their time.
Yes. 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 Yes.
And in having their time, if the king wanted pleasure and it was her
He went
time,
to his,
he couldn't have her.
he went to concubines.
Wait, he got a harem.
Come back and say,
Hmm. He sure does.
What was Sally Mae? Yeah, remember Sally Mae? Bring her on in here.
Hmm.
He had steak 3 days a week. Now he want fish. Now he want chicken. That's the king.
So fun.
Two of the king's units, Big Thana and Teresh were the 2 units, and they plotted to assassinate the king. What happened when Mordecai learned about the plot against the king?
He told Esther.
He told
He
Esther,
told Esther.
told the
Esther told
king.
the queen.
Got hung on
Mordecai's story was found to be true. It was written in
Mhm.
the book of the Chronicles in the presence of the king. They
Mhm.
were.
Yes.
So that's chapter 2. We are now going to go next week into the book of Esther, chapter 3.